A Swift Kick in the Ass, episode 104. Life is challenging and difficult. No one gets out alive. Time to suck it up, Buttercup. Get ready for a monster-sized boot, aimed to help you get traction on personal change and get living. I am John Curran, your host. Join me as I share my journey, exploring the forces that motivate us to change and help us get through whatever life throws at us. A swift kick in the ass. Life on your terms. Welcome to another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass. I'm your host, John Curran. Today's episode, Transcending Life. What do I mean, transcending life? Well, after last episode, I was talking with a friend of mine who is also a listener of the show. His name's Ryan. And he asked me to elaborate about going through things rather than going around things. And, to be going through something rather than going around it seems, I don't know, it seems a bit straightforward, but it's not at all. In fact, I think it's really contrary to what we're taught through social convention or conventional thought. We're taught really, it's always best to avoid problems or issues. Don't cause a fuss. Don't rock the boat. Walk away from a fight. And there are consequences that society places on us if we don't do that. And this directly affects our decisions, which then has a direct relationship to the results that we see in our life. Because our life is based on our decisions. So what do? We're taught to run, hide, duck, cover, but we could also stand our ground. We could fight. We could push. We could, say no. We can also love, and we can show love through understanding and supporting each other and accepting things for what they are. And sometimes, as I talked about on the last episode, it's time to embrace the suck. It's okay. Terrible things happen to us, and there are times to cry. And I've talked about this on the show before, how I have a very difficult time showing my emotion, and especially crying. I was taught, just like many men were taught, not to show their emotions, not to cry, to be strong. But I've learned that sometimes you have to be strong enough to be weak, and crying is not a weakness, it's a sign of strength. So it's okay to do all that, to grieve, to console, to support, however you are embracing the suck. But in this process, what you're really doing is you're letting go of something and saying goodbye and going through one door into another. And you're evolving and learning and adapting to really a new way of living, a new way of looking at life. So shouldn't we be grateful during these times. I think it was, what was his name? His name is John Dryden, who said, "Sweet is pleasure after pain." And, think about it. When you go through some pain, you appreciate pleasure all that much more. After 3 years of, living, and I wasn't living close to Tom. I thankfully got a chance to visit him and spend some time with him over the last 3 years, but I wasn't living with him day in and day out like his family was. But there's some relief in death. Tom doesn't have to suffer anymore, and his family doesn't have. They're released from the burden of having to care for him and having to deal with all of his illness. Tommy fought. Tommy stood his ground. He fought. And he also evolved as well. He accepted what it was, and he just tried to make the most out of it. Because sometimes you have to just go with the flow and recognize that you're not going to be able to stop the change. So you get caught up in it, and in that way get to move along with it. And this can mean going through it, because you're kind of getting absorbed into it and passed through. It's kind of I don't know. It's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but and I don't know if I'm communicating it right, but hopefully you get what I mean. Transcend literally means to get through. And, whether you realize it or not, you have lived through everything and anything that has stood in your way thus far. You made it. You survived. You have lived to tell the story. And the fact is that we are going to continue to live through everything that life has to throw at us until we don't. Some of it's going to be good. Some of it's going to be bad. Sometimes what life is throwing at us, we want to try to avoid. And what I was suggesting to Ryan before is that sometimes we should just try to get through it, and face it, rather than trying to run from it or avoid the fight. Now, Tommy's fight was different than those who he leaves behind. I, have mourned Tommy. Time has passed. And I'm finding that if you cling to grief and sadness, all it does really is increase your suffering. Just like, continuing to speak badly of yourself, putting yourself down, reminding yourself of the bad things that you've done. Just stop it. You want a swift kick in the ass? Here, boom. Stop it. It's just going to cause you more suffering. Sometimes we need to just let things go and just accept it And that's what I really mean. Sometimes what I mean by just getting through it. So how do we get through it? There really is not a wrong way. We all do it in our own terms, in our own way. And we have to do it in a way that works for us. Now, we can listen to what others say, but the truth of the matter is that what works for others doesn't always work for us. Some of it might, some of it may not. We don't really know until we try, and we apply it to our own situation. And there has to be a willingness and an openness to accept the lesson that's trying to present itself to us. The lesson will present itself when the student is ready. But oftentimes I think we keep telling ourselves that we're failing. And we want to give up. Don't. It was Thomas Edison that said, "I have not failed. I've learned 10,000 ways that don't work." And failure is when you really quit and you stop trying. Now, in the last episode, I was talking about moving through things and getting through things from a point of feeling the grief and the sadness and loss of a good friend. This episode, I want to try to get away from the grief and the sadness and move forward and transcend. Sometimes finding your footing and just finding your way through the obstacle and walk, or the challenge or the barrier and just getting through it. It's not just applying to grief. It's a way to approach life. Life is going to keep on challenging us. It isn't easy. There are forces in our life that will motivate us to change. How we perceive these forces is really up to us. I choose to try to find the silver lining and try to look for the good that comes out of the bad. The swift kick in the ass is really about that motivating force that brings about positive change. I'm still finding my footing. But I'm going to keep on putting one foot in front of the other. Maybe that's why I like hiking so much. Because when you're out there in nature and you're hiking, it is literally just walking. It's walking, putting one foot in front of the other for an amount of distance over some incredible terrain. I love it. It's quite challenging. I hope you get a chance to enjoy the outdoors. And I hope that I expanded upon Ryan's question from last episode about getting through things. So if you have any thoughts about subject matter, I love to hear it. Write me at solutions@ASKITA, aswiftkickintheass.com or John at aswiftkickintheass.com. I'm still trying to get all the email and get everything straightened out. It all takes time. So I think that's it for today. Thank you for being with me on this journey. And I really hope that you can learn from my journey. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, this is John Curran. Keep kicking ass. Peace. This marks the end of another episode of A Swift Kick in the Ass, placing it directly in the can. As much as I like to talk, even I have my limits. It's time to go. Catch me on the next show. For better or worse, whether you like us or not, please leave comments wherever you get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Visit our home on the interweb. I think you can leave me a voicemail there. You can also email me at john@aswiftkickintheass.com. It's been my extreme pleasure. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope you got your ass moving. Until then, until the next time, I'm out of here. Peace.